G'day and welcome to Talking Aussie Farming. I'm your host, Jono Weinstock, and today we've got a very special guest from the USA, Cassidy Johnston from Colorado. Cassidy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, just so you know, you are the very first non-Australian guest on our show, so it's a real privilege to have you. And look, we're all about educating and inspiring others about agriculture, and just noticed your real enthusiasm and passion. So very keen to learn from you today.
I'm very honored. Thank you.
Maybe to start off with, tell us about your journey into agriculture. From what I read, you're a first-generation rancher, which is not a term that we use here, but I just love saying the word ranch. And also a lover of weird socks, apparently, on your LinkedIn profile, which is kind of quirky. So
yeah, I'm wearing weird socks right now. So
you might have to show us during the show.
I mean, they just say howdy on them. They're tall. I got the one I was at Texas A&M because howdy's one of their slogans, I guess. So I've got all of the howdy things. But yes, I am first gen. So is my husband. My entry into ag is really weird because I didn't have anything to do with ag whatsoever growing up, beyond kind of riding horses sometimes for fun. Not many times, like a handful of times. But when I was in college, so I went to CU Boulder, and for your Australian listeners, CU is notorious for being it's a hippie school. It's like a super hippie school, pretty, very, very, very liberal. Yeah. And so I have an environmental studies degree. So hippie school. It's one of my favorite things, actually. And I found ranching the summer before my senior year. I decided the second semester of my junior year that I wanted to write a thesis, an honors thesis, because I'm an overachiever. And not in a good way. And I kind of landed on, at that time, sustainability was really new and, wasn't like a field of study the way that it is now. It was still kind of this thing that we were kicking around before it was a buzzword. And I thought it would be interesting to do a paper about like sustainability and ranching and rangelands. And, I kind of went to my thesis advisor and she was like, great, cool. Do you know anything about cows and ranching? And I was like, nothing at all. Absolutely nothing. And she was like, oh, cool. I'm so happy you have expertise. So she requested that I email somebody from Colorado State because we don't have an ag program at CU. And I think I cold emailed like the entire animal sciences department or something ridiculous. And a couple people emailed back, and one of them asked me to come up to Fort Collins to talk to him. And he kind of said, sustainability, there's not enough research there to back a thesis. But he said, the first thing I thought when you emailed me is, what does an environmentalist want to do with ranching? Because traditionally, especially in Colorado and in the American West in general, environmentalists and ranchers don't get along very well, which is weird because they have a lot of the same goals. So that's what I wrote my paper about. I wrote my paper about the relationship between environmentalists and ranchers and why there's so much conflict, even though they have the same goals a lot of the time. And so in order to do that, I had to go do research. It's a very long story, but my mom was a landman for an oil company and called up some of her people and said, hey, can my kid come like hang out with you for a while? She's mostly worthless, but she's going to research for this paper. I don't think she called me worthless, but, and I was supposed to go for 3 weeks. I ended up staying the whole summer. They hired me back after I graduated in December. I met my husband while I was doing all of this. And that's kind of all she wrote. That's all we've been doing in various capacities ever since. And that was 16 years ago.
Wow.
That's a long time.
Okay. So first generation, I guess it's a fresh set of eyes into the industry, similar to myself. So I didn't grow up on a farm up from the city, and 3,000 transactions later that I've looked at, I've got pretty comfortable with understanding farming in Australia, but over the last decade. And it is quite refreshing, so you can see from outside in a bit without some of the maybe previous biases. But now I guess you're actually living and breathing it. So, do you love cows now? And how active are you day to day, I guess, in a ranching business?
Yes, I really like cows. I like the whole thing. Somebody just actually asked me this question at a conference last week, and I don't like any part of ranching on its own. I like the whole thing together. And I like how complex the system gets when you get really big, or big by American standards, and start really understanding how to market cattle, and all the parts of the supply chain. So on this ranch, the ranch that my husband manages, I am not super active in the day-to-day. This time of year, I hardly do anything because this ranch has 2 locations and we are on the mountain. That's where our house is. We send the cows down for the winter to our other location, so we don't have to deal with having cows up here. We keep about 100 cows of the late calvers up here. I start to get busy when we bring stuff up here, especially May and then September, October, when we need more hands. And then throughout the summer when we're changing water, building fence or fixing fence, moving cows, like that kind of stuff is where I help the most. But I split my time probably not necessarily half and half, but a large percentage. It's pretty even depending on the year. I split my time now between the production side and then the consulting side. So I've built a consulting and comms business. And yeah, it's weird.
I must say, I saw you promote yourself as filling the gap or bridging the gap between the paddock and the table. So yeah, tell us what that means.
Well, growing up in town, I never heard about agriculture. I didn't know about any of the agricultural organizations. I didn't know anything about it. And so in the U.S., less than 2% of our population is involved in production agriculture at all. So if you then parcel that out by each sector, there are very few people who grow food in the U.S. And it's a problem. I shouldn't say it's a problem. It's caused a major disconnect between people who grow food and then people who eat food. Of course, we grow food too. But that trickles down into policy decisions and lots of misinformation about, climate impact and just a lot of misunderstanding about how food is raised. And so given that I grew up in town and then now we're in the large scale ranching side of the beef business, it's a lot easier for me to translate what is going on here to people who aren't here. And then it's also turned into helping tech companies grow or develop products sometimes if they're a startup, but also know how to talk to us as ranchers and understand what messaging to use by region. I mean, it's kind of complicated because we're a very big disparate industry. With lots of size differences, lots of regionality. And it's really hard to articulate that to somebody who doesn't understand it if you've never been on the other side of not understanding it. Yeah, that's kind of where I find myself. It's funny, a lot of my consulting clients are Australian because that's where the tech is right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have a young Aussie called Sam Rogers who you might have bumped into at CattleCon last week, who's just joined Y Combinator with a company, a very Aussie name called Grazemate, which is automating drones for cattle, for ranchers. And so he's over there pitching. I was wondering if I might try and get him on the show actually, but he's a young, motivated entrepreneurial farmer with an innovative product to help, save time gathering up the cattle.
Yeah, I've seen him. I didn't meet him. I've seen him on LinkedIn. And I've looked a little bit about the company. And that's kind of, it's a lot of my clients are young and they are starting something new, or the other kind of chunk I found myself in is they have an established company in New Zealand or Australia or, lots of Dutch companies are coming to the U.S., lots of South African companies, and they just need someone to help them understand how the American beef industry works because it's very different. It's hard to understand from the outside, and it's really easy to make missteps. They get kind of expensive if you don't understand the business.
What are the kind of differences that between, say, Australian and American meat or beef industry that you've noticed?
Australians, there are fewer operations and they're larger in scale. The average herd size of the Australian producer is much larger than the US. Our average is like 40. We have lots of like kind of hobby backyard kind of things. And then even for the large ranches, like this ranch is considered a large ranch. It's probably a top 1% in size and herd size. It's 70,000 acres, 1,000 cows. And my Australian clients are like, that's so cute. Look at you. Look at you over there. Like, oh, that's precious. Because, there are lots of stations that are 1 million acres and there's
not many of them, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't say, but 250,000, that's not entirely, it's more common. I shouldn't say like there's maybe not more, but a higher percentage of the Australian beef industry is of the larger size than the US, where the bulk of our cattle are in these smaller operations that are often like a side hustle or a second job or a weekend warrior kind of thing. It's less. There's plenty of ranches that are full-time jobs in the US, but it's just less common. And so the scale is very different. Obviously, the way that we have cattle in the US, we're spread out everywhere. They're not in one area or another, which I know that's not necessarily how they are in Australia, but Australia, the geography is very different and the population centers are very different. We just kind of have people freaking everywhere in the US, not necessarily, but like,
right. Okay.
So we just
huge scale and lots of cattle and a large producer of beef. In the world. What do you think's driving that fragmentedness in the States? Is it just affordability of land or are they still making a decent profit and lifestyle on a smaller herd size? Because, scale helps, I guess, with more land, more cows and favourable weather conditions or rainfall. I mean, I've had a look at some of your rainfall regions and I was trying to compare kind of Aussie beef land with American beef land. It's a bit tricky. So you probably know more than me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the Western U.S., we're pretty dry. We're like this year, we are very dry. We are concerningly dry. I think what drives the smaller herd size in the U.S. is there have been lots of people for a long time that just had a few cows. There's a lot of parts of the country where you can have row crops and some cows. And then you have cows that kind of graze your marginal stuff, or you get enough rainfall that you can have 100 acres and have 50 cows on it, and you don't really have to mess with them very much. And I think it's kind of always been that way. Granted, in the Western U.S., the big ranches have always kind of been here, right? And it's a hard business. Right now, it's a great time to be on the ranching side of the business. We are, the markets are in our favor currently, but we've seen lots of ranches go out of business. We've seen lots of ranches get broken up and developed. Land is still outlandishly expensive, basically everywhere. Right. Some states are better than others.
What kind of price per acre or hectare in your region for?
Oh, let me do some math. I mean, farmland in like Iowa, for instance, is going for like huge tens of thousands of dollars per acre. This ranch, if it were we'll go on to the conservative side. If we were to buy or sell this ranch today, no, I can't do math. Hold on. It's a lot. And the cost per acre goes down as you come west, and so this is probably where we are. Is a lot lower. It's still typically in the four figures. Like this ranch is probably a $40 or $50 million ranch, but it's not the value of the land. It's the land appreciation. It's the fact that they're not making any more land. Of course, in the Western U.S., we have a lot of hunting, lots of recreation out here. But it's ridiculous. It kind of is, and part of the reason we've chosen to do this business the way that we do. We don't really have aspirations of owning our own place.
First generation farming, it's the same in Australia. I guess you've got to start somewhere and get some cows and lease some land and try and make a few dollars and just expand bit by bit, right? And I'm not sure if there's any government programs to help young farmers get in and buying land.
There are, as long as you already own something. So like we are not eligible for a lot of the first time farmer loans because we don't own cows yet. Despite the fact that there are some we're eligible for. There's more creative financing coming online when the market switches back to being in favor of the packer and cows go way back down again. That's when we'll probably start to buy cows. We're definitely not buying now. That would be a bad choice.
Right. Sorry to interrupt. So in Australia, you can borrow 100 cents in the dollar to buy an animal, and then they'll help you provide funds to feed it, and you can fatten it and sell it, and go again. Is there finance options like that in America to borrow against livestock to expand?
Yeah. And you can use livestock as collateral. This is not necessarily my area because we've just been told no enough times that we're like, fine. When we have a guide that we'll use, because, the smaller amount, the lower amount loans, $100,000, $200,000, they're like, of course, we will give you that money. If you can prove that you could, if you can tell us you'll give it back, you have to give it back. And we could. It's just funny that you can prove that you absolutely know what you're doing. In a lot of places, they don't like to lend money on cattle because it's risky, right? Especially if you're...
We're in the game of finance. So we fund Aussie farmers when they can't get money from the banks. And so there's huge gaps to fill. And the banks in Australia are pretty, strict in their risk profile and what they'll lend to. So in the States, I guess, how hard is it for these farmers to attract money from the banks to grow and expand? Is it?
A lot of people are going to get loans through the government, not necessarily banks. The USDA has lots of, first-time farmer loans. I am seeing more and more alternatives to bank funding. Just kind of groups that have gotten funding together and are happy to give you, $50,000, $100,000 just to buy a few cows. Because the idea is you buy the cows and invest that wisely enough that then you sell the calves and you can pay that loan back and then go buy more cows. It doesn't always work, of course, but it is hard. Banks don't want to lend to unknown quantities. Cattle are risky. And if you don't have any other assets, which a lot of young first-time farmers do not, you're a pretty tough sell. And on the one hand, I understand. If you don't know what you're doing, it's a hard... If I were a banker, I would be like, well, no. Have you ever raised cattle? Like, could you have receipts? Can you explain to me why you want to be in this business? So there are options. We're seeing more, though. Particularly, there's a lot of talk about regenerative finance and impact financing and how do we fund people who are doing better, air quotes, better farming and ranching. There are whole conferences about interesting financing. So it is changing, but no one is doling out multi-millions of dollars for people to go buy a ranch. No, it's just not happening.
What you do have on your side is youth and enthusiasm. And I think, with an aging farming population and succession coming, not all children want to stay in the family business. And so, inevitably, I think there'll be opportunities to incentivize young farmers to stay on the land and accordingly. Otherwise, there'll be some problems down the line.
In the U.S., we are going to see we were just talking about this morning with a client, we are going to see an enormous shift in land ownership throughout the next 10, 15, 20 years. Billions of dollars will change hands because we are going to have a lot of family operations go out of business and a lot of investors go in and buy the ranches. And that's kind of where we found ourselves in the absentee owned side of things. A lot of people don't like it, but if we can keep, our goal is to keep ranches ranching, whatever that looks like, and to make sure the management is good and the cattle are nice and the grass and the ground and the water, it's all being taken care of. And it's an unpopular thing I say, but just because you're a fifth or sixth generation rancher does not mean you're doing a good job.
No,
you know?
that's right. Yeah.
So
what makes Aussie beef so special? It's kind of globally renowned for its quality and traceability. Is that recognised, do you think, in America? I mean, we export a lot of our beef to the States. Can you hear your thoughts on what you've seen and heard about Aussie beef?
traceability in the US supply chain is hard because we are so disparate, because we have so many different suppliers. The fewer suppliers you have, the easier, and by suppliers I mean ranches or stations, farms, whatever. Traceability is tough in the US. And yes, Aussie beef is much more traceable, if you will. I do think we're going to see a push for more traceability. It's already happening in some of the more niche markets of the beef industry. But traceability is really important. It's one of those things that I wish we could get right. We're super siloed. It seems like maybe the Aussie beef industry has a little bit, and I have no idea if this is true or not, has a little bit better cooperation because we have the ranch, we have the feeder, and we have the packer. Those are three very separate sections of the beef industry. And even if you have program cattle, maybe they're GAP approved or all natural or organic or whatever, there's still so many, and they go to a yard, right? And once they're at a yard, once they leave here, I don't know where they go. I don't know how they feed. I don't know how they grade, which is a problem. That's a problem for me because I don't know if my genetics are working or not. I get paid by the pound, right? So my incentive is to raise not necessarily the heaviest calves, but to wean the most pounds off of this place as I can. I love genetics. That's another one of my buckets is I'm a bull and semen rep for a company. We have some Australian customers. But then they go to the yard, and then I don't know. Do they fall apart? Do they grade? Do they eat? Do they convert? I have no idea. And then from the yard, they go to the packer, and the packer is not going to. We have a monopoly in the U.S. that it's the big four, and they process over 80% of the beef, which is
that right? 4 major processors of beef in the States, right?
Yeah, there's 4. It's Cargill, Tyson, JBS, and National, which is Marfrig. So JBS and National are both Brazilian owned, which is an interesting complication sometimes. And then Tyson and Cargill are obviously American. But if there's no incentive for the packer, and I don't tell people whether I'm pro or anti Big Four because that's one of those things that I think there's a lot of nuance to that conversation, and we have to have scale and economies of scale, and that's how we make beef affordable. But we don't like a monopoly or collusion or price fixing. But there's really, so far in the U.S., the consumer has not told us that they are willing to pay more for traceability at scale. That's why we have it in our niche, especially regenerative or sustainable or grass finished, which is a very small portion of the American beef industry. Yeah. The American beef industry is heavily commoditized. So when it's a commodity is a commodity, so we don't have the same level of traceability. I think that will change. We don't have a national EID program either. That gets a lot of resistance from American producers. So I don't know what the future of that's going to be. They've tried to do it several times, but you got to throw way more money at it than they have. And there's a lot of resistance from the beef people for lots of reasons.
So the consumer's paying a premium for if you want to go to a steakhouse in Colorado and you want to order a grass-fed steak, I guess it's not available, or it's not going to be on college campus because it's unaffordable, or it's just limited.
If there is a grass finished choice, there's only one. They may have a grass finished fillet. The American palate currently is for grain finished beef. I have had Australian friends producers tell me that we don't know how to finish grass-fed beef in the US. I don't like it. I prefer grain finish. We finish all of our steers on grain that we butcher. But typically when an American's going to go to a steakhouse, they're going to get like a really good grain finished steak. That's not true everywhere. You know, there are some pockets of the country where grass finish is becoming more common. But it's, pound for pound, it's less efficient. It takes longer. It's, it's just not the system that we've built in the US, which doesn't mean we can't change, of course, but it'll really change our land equation to increase. I mean, we import a lot of grass finished beef from Australia and New Zealand because we just haven't, we haven't made that model for most of us. We've built our ranches on sending stuff to yards. And so if we were to keep things in grass finish here, it would be a very different business than we're in right now. Either bad or good. I just, there's no incentive yet to change.
No. So what's your favorite steak? How do you like your steak? And what kind of beef would you order if someone else was paying for dinner?
My husband thinks this is super weird. I really like New York strips and sirloins. I like less fatty cuts. I do like a ribeye. We do prime rib for occasions at home. I don't like to order prime rib. Like I also don't really like Wagyu steak. There's too much fat. So I really love a really good sirloin or New York strip. My husband is a ribeye guy. So that's usually those go quick when we butcher a steer. So
lovely, good choice. Now we have in Australia Beef Week, which I think is similar to CattleCon.
I've heard.
Again, I went to the last one in Rockhampton, and there was, if you wanted to have a break and have something to eat, there was a little area called Meat Street where it was all meat. Couldn't find a salad if you're eating meat 3 times a day for a week. But the actual event was incredible, and it's put on partly by the Queensland government promoting. It's one of Australia's biggest beef events, and it's held every 3 years, I think. And I believe you just went to CattleCon in Nashville. So would love to hear about your experience at CattleCon, and I believe you might have been presenting as well.
I was. And as a side quest, the first night I was there, I went to dinner with an Australian, and she was telling us all about how we need to submit a talk for Beef Week in Rockhampton, which I think she said is next year. 2027 is the next one, because I want to go to Australia really, really, really bad. It's on my bucket list, and my boys want to go. My husband wants to go. But yes, CattleCon is every year. It moves locations. So this year was in Nashville. It's in Nashville again next year, actually. It's a really big event. I think this year was one of the most attended, like a record attendance. It felt like it. I've gone every year for the past several years, and it is exhausting. It is an exhausting week. It's only a few days, not even a whole week. But if you're in the beef industry in some kind of way as a business, most people are there. So all the tech companies, lots of Australians, all the big feeders, lots of the ag colleges, all the finance people, all the breed associations, lots of people. There were several booths making meat at 8 a.m. They're like, "Do you want to try this Wagyu?" And I'm like, "I do not. Listen, I love beef, but probably not." And it's a week, or it's several days. But our industry also does lots of meetings. So the cattle feeders have their meetings. The national cattlemen's and national cattlewomen's all have their big meetings. Lots of committee and policy meetings. State of the beef industry. Cattle Facts will give their reports. So there's lots of that kind of stuff. Like admin that goes on there. But then we have Cattlemen's College, which is where I presented with a friend, which is primarily designed for learning. You go and learn about whatever's going on in the industry or professional development or whatever it is. They always bring in a big main stage speaker. This year it was think Dale Earnhardt Jr., the NASCAR racer, and then another influencer guy that I forgot, and RFK Jr. spoke. I didn't go to that one. Lots of cattle demonstrations, lots of handling demonstrations, all that. So it's all there. It's a really busy week. And it's good. It's fun. It's just it's exhausting, like those big conferences are. So,
but I'm sure some great learnings and networking and meeting and learning and sharing is all part of the fun, and maybe having a beer at the end of the day.
Yes. And yeah, most of the booths have, I mean, not most of them, there's always a happy hour starting at like 3:00, which I kind of giggle because we live at 9,000 feet. So I go down to sea level or a little above, and it's like this, it's going to take a bunch. It's just going to take a lot.
Yeah. So I was going to say, what are the main themes that come out of these conference? I guess where's, especially with your experience in sustainability, and there's often some key themes and, where the industry's heading and what problems and challenges it's got. And you often walk away from these events going, wow, this is where things are at and this is where things are heading.
Yes. In my side of the thing, I'm very much in the tech world, but also in the young producer world. And my biggest takeaways this time were we didn't have a ton of new tech there. The tech is getting more solidified. I'm excited to see more affordable options. I'm hoping that's going to be a shift that we see, because a lot of the tech right now is out of reach financially for a lot of producers. And so if we want higher adoption for better management, we need to lower those prices a little bit. But really, from my side of things, beef on dairy is really big. People are really interested in beef on dairy, but it's really, I want to see more support for young people, meaningful support, not just like leadership luncheons and stuff like that. It's young people, especially if they're new to this business, don't know how to get here. They don't know how to make their own paths. I left Nashville and went right to Cheyenne to give a keynote about that to a group of young farmers and ranchers. And our young people are pretty lost. They need more support, which is something I'm going to work on, is how do we build a resource for jobs, internships, apprenticeships, these entry-level positions. I'm hoping we're all in the idea stage right now, but that's something we want to build. And just a way, especially young women, how do we help you? How do we help make you a space here? How do not only make you a seat at the table, but like pull out a chair for you and have you sit down and get some guidance? And how do we help employers work with young people and welcome them and understand and train them, right? That's a big deal. And how do we guide particularly new young producers through this business to let them know what their options are, what the different sectors of the industry are, how to get jobs? Because it's very overwhelming when you're young, but we are dying out faster than we are replacing ourselves. So it's a very important thing to do. And it's one of those things where I think a lot of us are worried about this. So I think we just kind of need a rallying point to say, okay, here's the thing that we can all do and lend our hands to this thing. And in the absence of other people building the thing, I think me and some other people are going to build the thing, because I, as a speaker and as a person that people see on LinkedIn, I want better answers. When a kid comes to me and says, where do I start? I want to be able to say right here, here's where you start. Because we don't have that right now. Right now, it's like, go to school, get a job. I don't know, like, what skills do you have? Kind of. It's hard. So I want to make it less hard,
Right. Maybe Australia does have a good pathway. I'm not sure relative. If you don't grow up on a farm, how would a young or a youth growing up in the city end up on farming and agriculture? Not easily, and not so common. I'm guessing if someone grew up in New York City, why would they come out to Colorado unless they stumbled on an interest in agriculture or business or farming? It's hard, that transition, to bridge that gap, I guess. I guess Australia's pretty well structured with ag schools in place, but there's definitely the same challenges with the next generation and a lack of interest and skills to take over the farms. And really, farmland requires on improved productivity, right, to keep growing more food sustainably, and that takes youth to use the latest in tech regularly. And so we do see the next generation slowly accepting all these new products and technology, but the older generation are less likely to do so. So I guess, I mean, that's great where you can educate and show and inspire farmers to become more productive and efficient.
Yeah, the adoption is much lower the older you get, but we are, part of it too is I think there are lots of companies who've designed tech solutions that farmers don't actually want or need, and or they're just too expensive, which is another kind of complicated dynamic with American producers. It's the cost versus the value. Even if something has really, really high value, if the cost, if the producer perceives the cost is too high, they won't do it, which is why I'm excited for some of these maybe less fancy, but just as functional or maybe simpler solutions to come online to help with this introduction. But yeah, young people are way more willing to try new things. They look at the industry with fresh eyes. They have more energy. They're enthusiastic. They just don't know where to go. So our job is to direct that energy and to harness it, right? Because that's what we need. We need enthusiastic, excited, passionate people. But we also need to kind of cultivate, enthusiasm and excitement and passion is not enough to get you through. You got to be pretty gritty. You got to be pretty resilient to get you through the stuff that is just, it feels really impossible. But I always tell my young audiences, like, you need to learn that you can do hard things, because like, I think back to some of the hardest things we've done, we've had some really horrendous calving seasons. Calving cows at 8,500 feet and it's 20 below and everything is dying, or calving cows in Montana and you're getting 40 a night because you're on a registered place and you time bred and stuff is getting sick and you're in the barn and you haven't slept, and no amount of enthusiasm will get you through that. Because
so much fun. That's resilience.
No, it's kind of terrible. And you have to learn, this next generation has a harder time with discomfort, I think, and a harder time understanding what they're actually capable of. We think we work on it a lot with our boys. Like, we're going to make you do hard stuff on purpose so that you can, because when push comes to shove, I don't want you to quit when someone, when things are relying on you. And in agriculture, in ranching, in any livestock agriculture, there are going to be times where we can't stop or something will die, and it's not all the time. We can't have that dynamic all the time. You'll burn out and get sick and do all the things. But the real question is, how do we find the kids that have that innate quality of, I'm going to figure this out. We're going to get through this. The only way out is through. I'm not going to quit. That grittiness is something that I hear a lot from people who are further along in their career who work with a lot of young people, that we need to help. You can't teach somebody that, right? You have to kind of inspire it or lead them through it. And the thing is, I think we can do it. And we see lots of people in the US wanting to come into agriculture because it's real, because you can touch it. You can feel it. You're tired at the end of the day because you did physical work. You didn't sit in front of a computer. That's the biggest struggle with me, is I don't like being in my office all the time. But I'm lucky that if I decide I need to go do something outside, I just go outside and feed cows for Bert, or clean the barn or move the horses or whatever we need done that day. There are so many people who are feeling that pull to something else. And sometimes it's like, okay, my job is not your vacation. Like, you don't just come to a ranch and throw some hay around and water some horses. Like, that's not the job. But we are seeing a very real transition of people saying, there's got to be something more. There's got to be something else. I don't feel like I'm making an impact. I don't feel like I'm living here in this city. I mean, that's how I felt. And I didn't realize that until I left, that like, I don't really feel alive in a city. And that's not everybody. I know lots of people feel more alive in those areas where there's tons and tons of energy. I just feel tired and overwhelmed. So I think we have the bodies. I think we have the actual humans. We just don't have the talent yet. So we're going to have to build it, you know?
You're on a journey, and good on you. Keep going. And inspiring. Now, just outside of ranching, I mean, there's so many, agriculture in America is huge. Have you ever had any interest in, say, almonds in California and other types of crops and commodities and farming businesses that you've been exposed to, or you just love cattle and ranching? Is there anything else that, you know, vineyards or growing wheat or corn?
I love learning from people who do that. I do not want to do that. Nobody wants me in that large of equipment. That is not like hay equipment is as large of a machine that anybody wants me to drive. Okay. I'm good at driving cars. Driving large equipment is not a skill that the Lord has blessed me with. I am fascinated by all of it. I am always amazed at the amount of technology and science that goes into row crops. There's so many more inputs for row crops. There's so many things you can measure compared to beef. My favorite thing about beef is that even really progressive places in the US, we're still really traditional. We still do things horseback. We still, kind of dress the same way. I really love that marriage of traditional and progressive, which is why I think the beef industry has always been is what appealed to me over all of them. I'm fascinated by people who grow cranberries though. Like cranberry bogs are super cool. I'm fascinated that you just flood this thing. I love all the different things. I know somebody whose family, and I've known this person for a long time. I did not know that they had a whole maple syrup grove thing in Vermont. Her family, so every year they all go back and tap all their maple trees to make maple syrup. And I'm like, what? That's your life? How did I not know this about you? And she was like, yeah, we've been maple syrup people for since 1776. We're revolutionary. And I was just like, that is so cool. So
they probably don't get to wear some of those cool hats that ranchers wear.
That's true. We do. Also, I get a lot of grief from Australians about my hats because they're really big. But it's okay.
It's a fashion accessory, but it's also being sun smart, right?
Yes, they're highly functional. I like wearing a hat when I am going to conferences and stuff because that way I don't have to really do much with my hair. I wear a hat almost every day. I don't like to fuss with my hair. But yeah, California especially is the coolest state because they grow most of our specialty crops. So you have cows, you have almonds, you have fruit, you have peaches. I know peaches are a fruit, but they have so many things all in one spot. And that's amazing to me because here we don't grow stuff. Grass barely grows here. So anybody that can grow a thing out of the ground, I'm very impressed. I can't grow much. Yeah.
That's true. Changing topic, we have a bit of fun on the show. Tell me about Farmer Wants a Wife in the USA. Is that a show that you love or hate or have seen? Because it's still going on here and it is good for a bit of a laugh and entertainment. But I think it started in the States. And maybe you know someone who's been on the show and being a young female on a farm, maybe the producers have hit you up. I don't know.
I've been married for 14 years, so I'm officially an old married person. I think it's hilarious. And I know I'm not a reality TV show person, but every now and then we'll see a little bit of that one. And you can tell the times when they contrive to make a situation more ridiculous. But I enjoy it because it makes me feel like I did when I first arrived here, and I tell my young audiences, I didn't know anything. Like, I didn't know how to drive a stick shift. I'd never driven a four-wheeler. I barely knew the difference between diesel and gas. I didn't know anything. Like, I was completely worthless hard skill wise. And so I think it's funny. I like it. It's very cringy, but I understand because it's really hard to find somebody in rural America, especially if you're as awkward as some of these farmer guys are, bless their hearts. I get it. You know, my husband, when we met, he was like, I was never sure that I was going to get married because I'd have to find somebody who is shorter than me. He's a shorter fellow, likes cows just as much as I do, likes ranching, doesn't mind living in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And it's tough. I mean, it is really tough. It's tough to find a partner. So I get it. But it's also like, this isn't exactly how it is. Like, some of this is not really true. Like, okay. But I think it's funny.
Oh, very good. Yeah, no, it is. I like how you said watching the show reminded you of first finding out what life was like on the farm and realising all the likely challenges that these contestants don't know what life might be like. And I wonder if any of these relationships have lasted the journey. Not sure, probably one or two. Actually, funny enough, at Beef Week 2 years ago, I saw a couple of Aussie contestants that I followed in that series, and I did go up to them. That was pretty cringeworthy, and got a photo with them, and had a chat with them and said, "How's it going? Well done on the show." And they had a bit of social profile. One was pretty friendly, the other one was like, bugger off. I don't, enough's enough. But they're still very down to earth and at Beef Week, so it was nice to kind of bump into them, have a bit of a chat about the show as well.
Yeah, well, it's exposure, right? It's because in the U.S. we have Yellowstone. I don't know if you've ever seen Yellowstone. Yeah, you can. Yeah. We giggle a lot because man, oh man, do they exaggerate and do really weird stuff. And we used to live in Montana. And we all know in the Western industries or side of ranching, we all know somebody who's been on the show or who is on the show or has some affiliation with the show, particularly once they added the sixes in. And that one is harder for me because at least Farmer Wants a Wife, like these are real people. You're kind of showing our real industry. And then you get to Yellowstone and you're like, okay, we are not chasing people on horseback wearing bulletproof vests with AR-15s. Like, guys, we don't have it. We don't have a train station. We don't brand our employees. That's actually a crime that we don't do. Like, and I get it. It's just it's the allure. It's the mystique of the American cowboy. And being married to one, I'm like, it's maybe not that mysterious. It's great. I love being married to a cowboy, but it's not nearly as glamorous as one would be led to believe. So
no, that's true. Well, Cassidy, we'll have to find a way to get you to Beef Week and visit Australia. And if you do, I'd love to come and hang out, buy you a steak, and catch up and introduce you to some people. But it sounds like you're doing really good things. You're inspiring the youth, and you're kind of connecting some Aussies over in the States. So for anyone listening or watching, if you've got any interesting ideas or products, reach out to Cassidy and have a chat. And there might be some opportunities in the States, which is the largest, top country, largest producer in the world of agricultural goods. So Cassidy, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and look forward to speaking soon.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Pleasure.